The Birth of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park by Madison McMahon. Theo Trenholm was a young boy born in 1910 who loved the mountains and exploring. He came from generations of people who called the Elkmont area home. His family, as well as the Trenholm's neighbors, the Cooks, and numerous other families, were not just currently residing in this area, but thought it would be the home for future generations of their family. In the early 1900s, tourists, primarily influential Knoxville residents, began traveling to the Elkmont area from nearby places due to the completion of the Appalachian Clubhouse. These people would ride the Little River Railroad's logging train from Wallen, Tennessee to Elkmont and stay at the Wonderland Hotel. Theo Trenholm's mother cooked for the dining hall at the Wonderland Hotel, and his father provided the establishment's meat from his hunting and fishing, as well as crops from the family farm. His uncle worked for the Little River Logging Company, who was harvesting the timber off the land to provide lumber for the new buildings, which Theo did not particularly like because the woods he was so desperately fond of were being destroyed right before his eyes. This was something he never spoke of due to the income it provided and the respect he had for his family. The people of the mountains were friendly to the Appalachian Club members. However, they had little interest in the social lives of the wealthy and paid them limited attention outside of work. Theo's parents tried to keep him sheltered from the hustle and bustle that the people of the city brought to the mountains with their loud music, different ideals, and the changing of their lands. In order to preserve what his parents found important to their life, they allowed Theo to go about his day as he normally had as a child, fishing, playing in the creek, and climbing in the woods, and enjoying the mountains they called home. Every day, Theo would wake up with the sun and head out to the mountains with his dad to go fishing for speckled trout to provide the Wonderland Hotel with dinner for the evening. He would then leave his dad to go exploring, which he loved to do as most young kids. His cousin Levi would meet him mid-morning to go cave exploring a few miles up from the Appalachian Clubhouse, where they liked to hide out and forget about the drastic changes occurring at Elkmont. Their favorite cave to explore was a long, winding cavern with a bunch of hidden turnoffs. This cave was perfect for the boys' favorite game, hide and seek. There was only one lantern available to the boys, which made the activity that much more thrilling. Theo and Levi talked for hours on end about the uniqueness of the cave and the very realistic idea that no person had discovered their favorite cave previously due to its undisturbed appearance. The two boys vowed to always keep this special cave secret and bring no one else to their favorite place. For years, the boys explored the mountains, enjoying the outdoors and playing in the woods. They never forgot about their secret cavern and frequented it often. The boys visited cave more often as the times changed drastically, with visitors coming to the area on a steadier basis, talk of the mountains being taken to make a national park, and the reality that they might lose their homes forever. Then one day, when the boys knew it was just a matter of time before they had to leave the mountains, they went and explored the same cave from sunup to sundown. However, they did not leave as they had done so many times before. Instead, they stayed in the cave all night long, telling stories of their time growing up in these mountains they were each so fond of for very different reasons. Theo talked about his love for fishing for speckled trout with his father and the adventures that he would never forget, while Levi talked about his love for Peggy Sue Waters. Levi was afraid that once everyone began moving that he would never get to see his love again. That night, they each made a vow. Theo vowed that he would visit these woods again one day, while Levi vowed he was going to propose to Peggy Sue. The next morning, they each woke up, bound and determined to keep the vow they made the night before. Soon after this night, Levi went to ask Peggy Sue's parents for her hand in marriage. Mr. and Mrs. Waters granted them permission and began planning the perfect small mountain wedding. On April 12, 1928, Levi and Peggy Sue, both 16 years of age, vowed their love for one another in front of their closest family and friends as well as God himself. Levi joked with Theo that he had kept his vow he made that night in the cavern, and it was up to Theo himself to do the same. Theo said once more that he would visit these parts of the mountain again one day and lay his eyes upon the cave that meant much more to both of them than anyone knew. After all, it was a secret. In late 1929, North Carolina, Tennessee, a few private donors, and John D. Rockefeller raised enough money to purchase the minimum required amount of land necessary to create the national park. Many visitors had been out west and visited the national parks in those parts of the United States, which enticed them to implement a park in the eastern part, and the Smoky Mountains was a natural decision for many. Although many people were excited about the idea of the national park, everyone in the community was terrified that they were going to lose their homes. The visitors who came and stayed in the mountains on weekends or even months at a time that favored the development of the park still did not want to lose their homes, so they sought legal counsel. The people of past generations in the mountain did not have the background to know what to do in situations such as this, but they paid attention and learned from the visitors they ignored in the past. In the spring of 1930, the Trenholms' life was about to change even more than it had in past years with new visitors. The park originators had raised enough money, however, further time was needed to acquire the remaining land from private landowners. Theo was witnessing many of his neighbors lose their homes, and he was terrified of when this occurrence would happen to his family. There were two major groups who were not selling: the Little River Timber Company, who was a majority landowner with profits to lose, and the small farm owners who did not want to sell simply due to their love of the land. This prompted the condemnation lawsuits, which permitted states to condemn a property for higher use. The logging company was preparing for settlement of the condemnation lawsuit, so they began laying off employees, with one of them being Theo Trenholm's uncle. It took years for most of the homes to be purchased, but just 2 years after the condemnation suit began, the Trenholms lost their property. In one fell swoop, over just a few short years, the Trenholm family lost their homes, their jobs, and everything they'd ever known. Theo's life would continue on, but it would never be the same as it was in the mountains. Upon losing their home, the Trenholms moved out west to Utah, where some of their kinfolk had relocated to a decade ago. At first, the Trenholm family, especially Theo, was frustrated with what was happening to them and fought the change they were experiencing. But little did he know these alterations would one day preserve the very thing they thought they were protecting. Theo, who was now 22, missed the mountains but enjoyed his new life in Utah, though it took some adjusting. He was still able to fish in the lake with his dad, but not having a view of the mountains while doing so sure made it feel different. He grew to love his new view, which was breathtaking in its own way. Being able to see for miles with the mountains of Colorado in the distance was amazing, but in a drastically different way, and only made him miss his home more. He worked hard, most times of the year 2 jobs to help provide for his family and save money for that trip back to the mountains he knew one day he would take. He worked as a cave digger mining for gold for a company that had acquired different mining locations all over the United States. He was great at his job and was thankful that every day he went to work it reminded him of that cavern in the mountains. As Theo got older, the harder it got trying to visit the place he always loved due to the cost of traveling across the country, as well as the family responsibilities he now had. But finally, on his 55th birthday, Theo took his family on a road trip across the United States via train to visit the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. His family was very excited because they had always heard their father speak of the breathtaking mountains. As they peered out of their windows, they saw the gorgeous mountains, which were much more drastic than the wide open view they were all used to seeing. They stayed in a small campground in the woods, which allowed them to spend their entire time enjoying the place that the father had missed. The next morning, Theo went off on his own to explore, in order to keep that promise to his cousin of keeping the cavern a secret. Due to the successful way the mountains had been preserved, it took him hardly any time to find the cave that he remembered fondly. Once arriving at the cave, he noticed nothing had been disturbed over the years, and he could hardly believe that 30 years had passed since the last time he had been there. He then realized, in that moment, that all the things he hated from his past, losing his home, family members being let go from their jobs, and everything he had ever known being taken away, was all worth it because his favorite place had been preserved.